Welcome to the Trend Detection Podcast, powered by Siemens. And now your host, Niall Sullivan.
No, I mean, yeah, really good. I mean, it's been mentioned a couple of times already, that 7% stat, and I will come on to that because, as you know, that is on my list to dive into. But you've mentioned that phrase a few times, or maybe a few times already, the global responsibility. I just want to make sure that for people who don't know, so what is global responsibility, just for the audience's benefit?
Yeah, I can cover this one. So a little bit of background into that is that, as I said, engineers play an integral role in shaping humanity's interactions with the world around us. It's uniquely placed to address the kind of global challenges that we're facing and that we've discussed already, to improve quality of life, protect the environment, increase our resilience to risk, but then also is responsible for some of the unsustainable practices. So we recognise now that business as usual is no longer acceptable. One of the pieces we came across when we were researching about global responsibility is by a guy called David Krager, who's the founder of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. And he said that first, global responsibility means working for the betterment of humanity. Practically, this means using one's talents and skills for constructive rather than destructive purposes. Secondly, means speaking out individually or collectively against dangerous and destructive uses of science and technology. And third, it means putting the welfare of humanity as a whole ahead of the considerations of any one nation. And I think today, like now more than ever, there's a greater public and sectoral attention on global responsibility and addressing societal and environmental inequalities than ever before. And if we look at other sectors and other disciplines, like doctors have a moral duty to their patients, first and foremost, lawyers have a moral duty to justice, but what about engineers? So we need to move engineering from an approach where it's for people and planet to an approach where it's with people and planet, which is a globally responsible approach. It means critically reflecting on our role, engineering's role within society, and understanding the societal, environmental, and economic impacts it has, both locally to where it's implemented and globally through supply chains and operational output. So kind of a good way of visualizing this is the donut economics model by Kate Raworth. So it's kind of useful visual to help conceptualize global responsibility, where the inner ring represents a social foundation, which is defined by the Sustainable Development Goals and internationally agreed standards on ensuring that no one falls short of life's essentials. And then there's an outer ring which represents an ecological ceiling, which is defined by Johan Rockström's 9 planetary boundaries, which set out unacceptable levels of environmental degradation and potentially planet system tipping points. So taking that visualization into account and bringing in engineering, you can kind of start to see how engineering has an impact and is critical to delivering on social foundations and also within the kind of limits of our planet. So for example, engineering is critical to deliver housing that provides safety and security to people. Housing uses the planet's resources, such as land, which can negatively impact biodiversity, water, and impact freshwater withdrawals. And then construction materials, such as concrete, which is one of the world's largest carbon emitters. So that visual is quite helpful in understanding what global responsibility looks like. And that really sets out our vision and mission as Engineers Without Borders UK, which is society needs to balance the needs of all people within the limits of our planet. So we set out in our strategy for 2021 to 2030 4 guiding principles of global responsibility to be adopted across the engineering community and to embed how engineering is taught and practiced. So the 4 principles are to be responsible, which is to meet the needs of all people within the limits of our planet. To be purposeful, which is to shape the outcomes, to be equitable and ethical throughout engineering and the life cycle of any product. To be inclusive, to ensure that diverse viewpoints and knowledges are included and respected in engineering processes and outcomes. And then finally, to be regenerative, to maximize the ability of all living systems to achieve and maintain a healthier state and naturally co-evolve. So that's what we set out within our kind of mission and vision of what global responsibility looks like.
And often, I mean, I think I've mostly heard that term, so I guess it's a lot, the big Fortune Global 500, whatever companies have it as, a top line in all of their sort of annual reports. But what I wonder is how can that filter down through, because that's starting at the very top all the way through an organisation. And again, it's a very open question and not an easy one to answer. But have you seen that from both your experiences?
I think one thing about the idea of globally responsible engineering is that it speaks to individuals as professionals. It's like, I did not become an engineer to make money. Like, I became an engineer in order to be useful to society. And today, being useful to society also means really considering like our environmental impact and how we can actually help restore the impact that we've had in the past, and how we can work to really meet the needs of all people, whatever age, wherever they live, whatever their needs are, etc., etc. So it's that really celebrating of the rich diversity of people, and seeing that reflected, because I don't just want to build skyscrapers for very, very wealthy people, or super fast cars for like a tiny population to use, when 40% of people don't have access to hand washing at home. It's just this disconnect for me. So I think in terms of how does global responsibility like translate into the profession, it's really important to speak to people about this, like, as this is what we mean by integrity. People are aware of the challenges of our age, and they really are some of the greatest challenges we've ever faced, and they're super complex. So engineering, I think, is a really great way of making the impossible possible. There's a lot of people that are thinking, gosh, these challenges are almost too much for us. How could we ever collaborate on this scale to address them? But actually, engineering in the past have been the answer to those seemingly impossible situations before. How could you clear up cholera in London in the 1900s? Or how could you make it not be as smoky and like have that fog, and suddenly engineering was part of the solution that helped clear that and helped reduce cholera. So that must have felt like, oh my gosh, that we thought was impossible, and managed to respond to it. And I think nowadays, like, this is the space, this is the magic of engineering, is to be able to do things that are amazing for people. I remember, when GPS was invented, or even wireless headphones, those things feel magical. And actually, see if you can improve someone's quality of life, or if you can improve somebody's ability to engage within society by having like accessible transport for everybody's needs, or you can make sure that people and future generations see the actions being taken today to really respond to what we know about the planet and the need to restore it. I think that's amazing. I think that's very hopeful, but it's all based on like action and actually like the role of the engineer. So I think it's about speaking to, why did you become an engineer? Most people's reasons are broader than, I'm here because I love concrete. I've not met a civil engineer yet who's told me that's why they became a civil engineer. And I'm sure the same is in manufacturing and in digital and in other professions. Like, it's normally not a like singular, narrow focus. So discussing that breadth of like the reasoning why they became an engineer, or they became a professional working in engineering, or their story to get to this point, and then linking global responsibility as, part of that story. What does it mean to be useful to society? What does it mean to make sure people can live a good life in different parts of the world? What does that mean? And I think that's the piece that we need to kind of crack, is translating sustainable development goals into somebody doing something on a day-to-day basis, because no one person is going to deliver on global goals, but there is almost, or if not 8 billion people on the planet, like, especially in engineering, this minority of the population has such a responsibility to others. So I think that's how we translate it, is we have human stories about it, a bit like safety. I don't respond to safety because someone tells me that there's a certain regulation that I'm meant to do. Is I respond to safety because I work with people and I want to make sure they go home to their families, or I go home to my family. It's that the human touch kind of coming through there. I think that's how we make this a reality, is we talk about it in the way that matters most.
Yeah. No, and I was sort of nodding in agreement there, because it's certainly not about, and we've all been there working for whatever companies we've worked for. If something's dictated to you, you might do it because you're told to do it, but it's not got the burning desire in you personally to do it, I guess. And I guess that's what you're saying. It's on the personal level. Everyone has a part to play. It's not to say it doesn't have a part to play, but ultimately you've got to have the sort of fire in your belly as well, kind of thing. drive that change.
And I think when people have a get up and go, like, it's attractive to other people as well.
Yeah.
There's this, it's quite a fun thing to be part of. Like, I love working with the people within the Engineers Without Borders network, or people that are interested in global responsibility, because, their energy and what they're trying to do and their skill sets sometimes are like, hey, that's pretty fantastic. Like, imagine that was the norm. So it's pretty inspiring, I think, to get involved as well.
Yeah. And like I say, people spark off other people, I guess. And if we're talking, bring talk back to the pandemic, and us all, well, where we are now, are all sort of separate. But yeah, it just shows how important bringing people together is. And actually, I mean, do you? Because I guess you say because you're Engineers Without Borders UK, but do you? I guess you work very closely with other countries as well. I guess that goes without saying, really, but. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, how you work with other entities.
I think a great example is our relationship with Engineers Without Borders South Africa. So in 2018, we're always friends with other Engineers Without Borders organisations, but the CEO of both Engineers Without Borders UK and South Africa met and discussed, actually we're facing similar challenges in engineering education, and it doesn't take a huge leap to work out why. It's because South African educational system is built on a British system. So there's that commonality there in terms of how the educational system today was formed and shaped. So facing similar challenges in terms of engineering education, in that, there's a lot of dominance on technical skills. Ethics doesn't appear as much as it needs to. It's not framed around being useful to society and about your relationship with people and planet and the impact of the work you do. It's quite like narrow and technical and sometimes theoretical without practical application. So those kind of commonality were coming through. And we said, well, we run a program that helps to spark at an early stage of the degree course the connection for individuals of the role of engineering in the world. So it's called Engineering for People Design Challenge. You learn about a place, you develop a solution for that place. This year it was Govan in Scotland, in Glasgow. You hear about that place, the story of that community, what's going on, and you develop engineering and how the engineering supports that community, and then you develop a solution of how you'd improve things. So we had this model, and the CEO from South Africa, Webco, said, that sounds fantastic. Let's explore how this could work and actually be applied. So we set out on a collaboration to work purposefully with each other in an equitable partnership. And today, Engineers Without Borders South Africa run the program with us. So we share the program. And it's run in South African universities, reaching, first year and second year and third year students in South Africa, alongside students in Scotland and Ireland and the UK and USA as well. So it's this kind of global program has happened, which is amazing for us, because yes, there's international students at UK universities, but actually to run a global program and to write briefs where actually you learn about language and, what does one word mean in South Africa compared to here? Like, there's all this different interesting pieces. So I think one real thing for us has been, we've been able to share and run a program with Engineers Without Borders South Africa, but also through that process, really test, is this program globally appropriate? So that's been a really wonderful collaboration and something really practical that's helped, push the dial forward, improve. Over 1 million hours of student learning is unlocked by that program every year. So. And 12,000 students participate as part of their degree. So it's a real switch on moment for engineers studying at universities here in the UK, but also internationally.
Yeah, and as well as obviously other parts of the Engineers Without Borders sort of community. These are probably part of the community as well. So I was sort of interested. I looked on your website. There's a lot of diverse sort of organisations and partners. And again, like I said, it's about connecting these dots and becoming the interface. Again, I like that sort of analogy for sort of bringing people together. But how diverse, maybe you could explain some of the partners and organisations you work with, because they're quite diverse from what I saw on your website.
So one kind of critical group is we work with over 50 universities who run our program. So we collaborate with educators. So for example, University of Bristol, we collaborate with the educator there who designs a module for 500 engineers, and they use Engineering for People Design Challenge. We spend 6 months writing that brief that's then used in that space, telling that story to the community, and there's an online portal, etc. So it's that, people have got different roles, and we do that with 50 universities. With our program. So a really important collaborative model is our relationship with universities, and those universities being such a key part of making that program happen. So that's one is, and that's been we also have student society groups at over 25 universities here in the UK. And that's student groups that have autonomy. They run activities, they talk about global responsibility, bring this into conversation and spark events within campus and that extracurricular space. We also work with the Royal Academy of Engineering, which is the national academy here in the UK, but also it has an international voice and reach as well. And really looking at, well, is progressive leadership in engineering globally responsible? Like, is that the connection? Is actually that's where things need to go in terms of where we need to push this profession forward. So that's a really interesting space. And what we're doing together with the academy is trying to look at how could you reimagine engineering degrees in a way that really meets the challenges of today, so that sustainability education is not patchy. Education on ethics isn't patchy. It's actually really core and central, but doesn't diminish the importance of the technical skills that we develop as engineers as well. And we work with a number of professional bodies through our relationship with the Academy. So there's 39 professional bodies here in the UK. And we have a close relationship with the Engineering Council as well, the regulator. And then we work with strategically aligned companies. So they can be community-based organizations or social enterprises or charities or multinational 60,000 employees kind of global entities. So we have this different ways of working. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, as any relationship happens. But most of the time it works really well. And we invest in having strategic relationships with, not everybody, but a few organizations in order to who believe in our cause, and we believe in working together, and we put the effort into building those relationships so they're not transactional, they really are strategic, and we're aligned. So we're thrilled to be working with the likes of Jacobs or Spirax Sarco. Anglo American have supported us since the early 2000s, and RS Group, as amongst others in that strategic partnership space. So we're always looking for companies that are interested in being part of this shift. And obviously we play a wee role in that, but actually it's the connection between all of those organizations that will make it a reality. So always on the lookout for other strategic partnerships or collaborations of any sorts. Yeah.
I guess from my perspective as well, are there any sort of technology vendors who are, or technology companies who are interested in or getting involved in your sort of movement as well?
Yeah, so we received support from Bentley Systems, who design kind of the 3D modeling. I'm sure that they do far more than that, but it's that kind of they provide software to engineers in order to create the designs that they need. So really thrilled to be working with Bentley, and they support us and other engineers at borders organizations, and they see the connection between actually digital products and the services and software that they have. Let's put it for good use. It's got to be part of this shift and this change. So there's an interesting strategic alignment there. And in the past, we've had support from Autodesk and others as well. So yeah, there's normally a connection. But yeah, we obviously spend the time to make sure the relationship's the good fit for both organizations. Yeah.
Oh, of course. And as a general point, how important is technology to your movement and to achieve those sort of sustainability goals and global responsibility goals of organisations? How can technology assist? Predictive maintenance maybe being one, but there's plenty of others as well that play an important role.
I think interested to loop JC on this one as well. But if it's technology, now you meaning that in the kind of what's your definition of technology? Actually, let's kick us off with that just to. Understand exactly.
I'm the one asking the question. The definition of technology, it's just one of those things, isn't it? That's just there. That's all, it's the I guess it's the digital element, isn't it? Digital side that's helping to automate and to
improve our lives, I guess, in digital ways. But that's a rubbish definition, so I might edit that out. But
And the reason I ask is because people have different definitions of technology.
Yeah.
Some view it as like, way back the hammers that were invented, or, pipes in the ground being a technology, So I just like to check to see what angle people are coming at.
So what I would say, so maybe I should have rephrased digital technology. It would have helped with that question. But but you're right. That's my mindset. Technology is automatically digital, but that's an interesting perspective. Because, like I said, digital wasn't a thing in the 1900s. You said your great granddad. So sorry. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
No, for sure. And but that's often how definitions are used in different ways as they grow meaning, and depending on your perspective, you see it in different ways. So digital technology, obviously, like digital has such a huge role in terms of making engineering more efficient, giving us visibility of such complexity in beautiful ways, whether it's building information management, whether it's 3D models, whether it's understanding our supply chains, whether it's connecting with people around the world in amazing ways, like digital technologies or GPS, being able to find stuff very easily, like these interfaces and how they can actually be translated to day-to-day use is amazing. So I think what is the role of technology in helping organizations to achieve social and environmental justice is it's really key. But any technology is like a pit bull. You can train a pit bull to be a really sweet puppy, or dog, but you can also train a pit bull to be an attack animal. So you can train technology to impact other people. Whether it's policing algorithms, whether it's facial recognition software that doesn't actually pick up certain people but only some, whether it's looking at drones and their use in warfare, whether it's there's this, I think responsible technology can really help organizations shift. But I do think the same thing applies to technology as to engineering, is we need to make sure that we're stewarding that technology to work for the best of people, because drones can have an amazing use. They can be really responsible and help, medical devices get to places much faster and save lives. At the same time, they can be used in warfare and cause huge destruction. So I think it's about, how do we steward the evolution of these technologies, so that we really do focus on maximizing their role to achieve social and environmental justice.
I think it is really interesting as well. Like this comes back to what we said earlier about the kind of language and narrative, and like the shared understanding of what technology and engineering means and looks like. So, because I think with the technology, like being that steward driven to shape technology to the benefit of all, like it does demonstrate an ability to navigate kind of complex relationships and inherent tensions to make sure that the technology is shaped for a sustainable and equitable result. And then coming back to what you're saying about how the role of technology being used in enabling that and preparing people to deliver on sustainable and equitable results. I'm going to do a bit of a loop. Sorry, excuse me. I'll do a bit of a loop, but I'm coming back to it. So one of the things we do with the Engineering for People Design Challenge is it's delivered through a problem-based pedagogy. So it's essentially we work with a community partner to capture a story and a portrait of place that we can then deliver this context to the first, second year, or third year undergraduate students in a safe space, so they can trial ideas, they can trial different solutions, different concepts within a kind of safe environment without their iterations or solutions or 12,000 students coming in one context to trial an engineering idea. That wouldn't be very responsible for us if we were to facilitate 12,000 students coming into Govan to then trial their ideas. So that it's very much the Engineering for People design brief that we put together brings this context to students in a safe space so that they have the agency and the space to fail and the space to try new things and the space to be creative. So that's one way we do in terms of like bringing technology to to show that context to students. And this year, what we're doing for the next year's Engineering People Design Challenge is bringing an interactive, so the students can kind of walk through that context without actually having to be within the community themselves. So that's one way in terms of how technology can help students understand the kind of complexity and tensions within the ideas that they create with a community partner or a community context. And then the Engineering People Design Challenge is also a national competition. So we hosted in June our grand finals for the UK context. So we had over 30 student teams come together to kind of pitch their ideas. And the winning student team had a really amazing concept in terms of using shipping containers. But what they'd also done is that they'd created a digital twin that they could then put into Google Maps to see what their context and what their idea looked like in real life, and where and how it might impact and where it might impact the actual local context itself and govern as well. So there's that role of, like, if you're referring back to digital technology, like digital twins to actually experiment, like, okay, if I do this within this kind of safe environment, I can kind of test and explore what the iterations and what the implications of that might be within the actual community context. So there is a role in bringing in technology to help us enable sustainable and equitable results without actually trying to implement them on the community, and actually work with communities and work with societies in shaping that technology so it is for the benefit of all, rather than just forcefully putting something within a context without any kind of co-creation exercise at all with communities. So that's where I can see kind of digital technology kind of being brought in to help facilitate that.
Please like and subscribe on all major podcast channels, and find out more about Senseye Predictive Maintenance at Siemens.com.